Good morning and welcome to Mechwarrioronline. Today I'm going to talk about pulse lasers. Pulse lasers are pinpoint damage style laser weapons versus standard laser weapons. Standard laser weapons fire a duration, and as long as you get all of the shot on target, it delivers a solid amount of damage. However, that's not always the case, and one of the benefits of a pulse laser is it does several strikes within a single punch that delivers more pinpoint damage. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So we're using today my Hellfire C, and it's because this one has 4 laser points, and coincidentally there are 4 pulse lasers available on Clan Mechs. So I've got a large pulse laser, a medium pulse laser, a small pulse laser, and the ubiquitous micro pulse laser. Yes, this is actually a thing, and it actually does deliver. So the large pulse laser has a standard range maximum of 1100. Now you can see at the amount of damage shown in the chart that it's not doing very much damage at 1125 or 1100 at all. But it is still making the target, and it is letting people on the other side know that you're thinking about them. Optimum range on this is 550, which means at 550 it's going to do maximum damage based on its rating. This takes up 2 slots, weighs 6 tons. God, it used to be 7 tons. Wow, they've reduced it even better. Weighs 6 tons. I had to do a double take. It does 13 damage, and it produces 9 heat. Now the cooldown period, which is the time that after you fire the weapon before you can fire it again, is 3.5 seconds. And health is 11, whatever that means. Anyways, moving on. So this is the largest of the pulse lasers, and it does significant damage. It is a lot of fun to use. Next, we have the medium pulse laser. This takes up 1 slot, weighs 2 tons, and does a damage of 7, which is what it's always pretty much done. This has a heat range of 4.5, that's the amount of heat that it produces, and a cooldown period, which is the time before you can fire it again, of 3 seconds. And then the duration versus the previous one is 0.8 versus 1.0. Now, at maximum range, which is 540, as spoke before, it's not doing a lot of damage, but it's doing some. It's just reminding people that you're there. Optimum range is 270 meters, and that's where it's doing its maximum damage all the way up until it's point blank. The small pulse laser, probably one of the most popular ones. The mediums and the smalls are definitely the most popular ones used across the spectrum. The small pulse laser weighs 1 ton, takes up 1 slot, does a damage of 5, and it has a heat of 2.2, which is not bad. Also, its cooldown period is 2.4, which is very good. Lastly, we have the micropulse laser. The micropulse laser does 2.8 damage, heat of 1.2, which is practically non-existent, and cooldown of 1.6 seconds. And the duration of fire is 0.5, so it's fairly quick. This has a maximum range of 260 and an optimum range of 130, so this is definitely close quarters CQB battling. Either of these weapons are going to do exceptionally well at providing serious damage. As an example, I have a Mad Dog Revenant, and that one has 2 laser points here, and then I changed out the arms so it's got 3 here and 3 here to go with the 6 missiles. And I run that one with all of the micro lasers. So I'm running 8 micro lasers on that mech build, and it is a lot of fun because these things fire. They go bum bum, and then bum bum, and bum bum. It's fairly quick. And if you go and skill through to get a faster cooldown rate, it's more like ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And so you can see how you can do some serious damage really quickly. Moving on, we will take this into a match and see what you think. Hello, and now we are in the battlefield. And we're going to go ahead and test this weapon, so let's pick a target. And our typical guinea pig target is going to be the Atlas, because it's an innersphere mech, it makes sense.
Target acquired.
They make good targets. So we're going to test the large pulse laser, and I'll show you the damage that it does. And remember to watch the top right of the screen where it talks about the damage being done. So we're going to do damage on each one of the components of this using just the one weapon on each component. So for the left arm, I'm going to use the large pulse laser. As you can see, this does a fair amount of damage fairly quickly. However, it does take time to put it down onto the target. One of the things you're also going to realize about the pulse lasers is they have a very limited range. You can see in the bottom right of my screen that the maximum range is 184, 310, 632, and 149, and those are for optimum range points. They're based on the optimum range, not the maximum range. Still going. Now the component has been destroyed. So the large pulse laser has a reasonable amount of range compared to the other ones. And we're getting shots down target, and that one is at 539. Let's take this thing a little further out. I got this big ugly mech behind me. So now we're at 614, which is still inside of the optimum range. And we're still hitting target. Next, we will test the medium pulse laser. You can definitely hear it has a much faster rate of fire. You can tell why this is a very popular weapon to use, because it does fire reasonably fast. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's doing damage nonetheless. I'll tell you what, if you have 3 of these medium pulse lasers, which weighs about as much as one of the large pulse lasers, you can do a hell of a lot of damage really quickly. But you can see it takes time. So now that component is removed. Next, small pulse laser. Small pulse lasers didn't used to be one of my favorites, but they actually are. I like small pulse lasers more than I like the micro or the large pulse laser. And as far as they go with the medium pulse lasers, they both have their purpose, and there's pros and cons to both. Once again, much faster rate of fire. It's going to take us a week to kill this one component, so I'm not going to bother. So this has a reasonable rate of fire, but the range is not incredible. And as you can see here, I'm not going to hit this target whatsoever. Let me show you what that looks like at distance. You can see where it just tapers off right around here. Lastly, we have the micro laser. The micro laser it's great if you don't have a lot of extra tonnage to throw at a weapon system. Butter-dump, butter-dump, butter-dump. Now these are only good if you have lots of them. If you're going to depend on this as a primary weapon, you're going to come very short, unless you're going to go for a complete attrition, because these will do damage over time. And as far as range, I don't know how close I have to get with this just to even get a hit. Nothing. So we go to the medium pulse laser, and now the medium pulse laser is making target, and you can see it's in yellow, and when you look at the bottom right, it is doing damage, but at the mech it's doing very little. And if you fired all of them at once, you can really see let's show this from a different point of view. Where the hell am I? There I am. Oh, wrong direction. Damn it. You can see the rate of fire that each one of these has as they're cycling through. Now back at the workshop, we've talked about the 4 types of pulse lasers. I want to talk about one other thing that works really well with pulse lasers, and that is the flamer. So as an example, if I was to make this as a possible build, and we're not talking about the missiles right now, we're just talking about pulse lasers, I would probably go down this route. I might go two large pulse lasers, and a third one, we don't have funds, but whatever. And then I would do a flamer. Now what you're going to get, first of all, flamers, by the way, look entirely different. This is a flamer right here. It basically looks kind of like the opening of a Bic lighter, and that's essentially what it is. So this would be a very viable build, and then you could load this up with heat sinks, excuse me, and put 2 cool shots on it, and you could actually have a very viable build. Granted that you would probably want to put either LRMs or SRMs on board as your secondary backup weapons, but this would be a viable build. Right now as it stands, with 4 double heat sinks, this has a heat management of 1.32, and that's with the flamer on board and the large pulse lasers. Another possible build would be simply going with medium pulse lasers and then the flamer. Now see how the flamer's up on top? That's just something that has something to do with the builds. But this is another possible viable build. So, in closing, there's a lot of different ways you can go about driving things. And what specifically, with the pulse lasers give you maximum damage to a single point. And one of the benefits that they have is that they fire regularly very much quicker than standard lasers do. And in regards to putting the flamer on board, the reason I haven't talked about this is because the flamer has a maximum and optimum range of 90. And it takes up one slot and it weighs half a ton. So it doesn't weigh very much, but it does quite a bit. Damage is very negligible. You're not going to kill a mech using the flamer, just the flamer alone. You're actually depending on the other player to kill themselves. When you fire this weapon, it's going to bring their heat on their mech up to 90%. Nothing higher. It will never cause them to overheat, just simply sitting there. It is doing some damage to their mech by getting the components hot and taking away some armor, but it's going to take a long time. However, the real benefit is the moment that they fire any weapon that requires heat dissipation, like a ballistics weapon or a laser or a missile, any one of those, with the exception of machine guns and Gauss, is going to cause them to go into 100%, and it's going to cause them to overheat. The only exception on the Gauss rule is if it's like a heavy Gauss, which will do that. Also, PPCs will cause them to go into overheat, and it doesn't matter really what size you're recommending, because that extra 10% is going to go right over the top, even on a light pulse. So that's what the benefit of a flamer is. So a single flamer can do that. Now, if you add multiple flamers to a build, and then you tie them up with, we'll say you go 3 flamers and then 6 small pulse lasers, now you've got a very strong pinpoint damage. And now you're talking about my Hellbringer. My Hellbringer is set up like that. I have 3 flamers on board, and I think I'm running 6 small pulse lasers. And it does excellent pinpoint damage and does a serious amount of morale, we'll say, to the other player, because now they're getting really frustrated really quickly, and it's going to cause them to make irrational decisions. That's essentially what a flamer does. The flamer acts like the way a machine gun does on a piranha. It's going to irritate them really quickly, and they're going to go into complete fight or flight mode, and it's going to make them make bad decisions. That's the purpose of a flamer. So with a build as simple as this, with 3 medium pulse lasers and a flamer, you can do quite a bit of damage and definitely strike fear into the morale of the other players. That's what a flamer's purpose is. And that's why I think the flamer is directly tied to pulse lasers. Now you can use a flamer with any other weapon system, whether it's a heavy laser or a medium laser, ER medium laser, or if you're operating it with a PPC. But what the big benefit of it is if you work it in conjunction with pulse lasers, you can do significant amounts of damage. And I'm not just talking about to the mech, I'm talking about to the psyche. Once they go into overheat, they're scrambling to get their mech turned back on again, because maybe they didn't put their mech in override. Whenever I go into the battlefield, even if I'm on a mech that's not going to get hot, I put the override on, because I don't want the mech deciding whether or not I can fire my weapons or not. That's part of the reason why I don't like streak weapons, because unless you have a lock, you can't fire. And a streak weapon to me is basically a weapon system that if you don't have a lock, guess what? You're not firing your weapon. You're just basically moving around, praying to God you can get a lock. So then you have to deal with tag and narc, and it just adds a whole bunch of other equations while you're trying to defend your mech. I hope this was beneficial, and I hope to see you on the battlefield.